Let me just first of all start with what we're going to cover over the next 40 minutes or so. So we're going to go through, first of all, is AI really delivering on its promise that we're all reading about at the present time point? We'll also then look at how do organizations really accelerate their AI in 4 different stages. We'll look at the building blocks of an AI environment that will allow organizations to build AI as a service. We'll link that into then a quick introduction into a new platform that H2O has created called H2O Hybrid Cloud. We'll then go through a demonstration of that, really touching on the benefits of that particular platform. And then finally, we'll go into a formal question and answer session. But while we do have that question and answer session at the end, please do not hesitate to ask them in the Q&A tab as we go along. If you are anything like me, you may well have forgotten them by the end of the particular session. So feel free to pop them in the Q&A tab and we'll introduce them in that final session. So let me just start off with talking about the promise of artificial intelligence. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time here, and I'm not going to give you a full history of where we've come from with regards to AI. But I just want to give you a few key numbers as a food for thought. So first of all, the number 1955. Well, despite all of the hype that we've seen in the last few years with regards to AI, AI isn't new at all. 1955 is the date that the term artificial intelligence was really first coined. It was based on a proposal of a 2-month, 10-man study of artificial intelligence that was submitted by someone from Dartmouth College, Harvard University, IBM, and Bell Telephone Laboratories. At that point in time, the science and engineering of making intelligent machines was really seen as a reality. And there were a huge amount of predictions made about how this new technology would revolutionize the way society operated. However, in the early 70s, after many false starts, funding was cut back as investors were really tired of waiting for practical AI applications. And it was at that point we entered what's referred to as the AI winter. But 2009, as we ended that first decade of the 21st century, AI really started its rebirth. 2009 was the year that the McKinsey Global Institute estimated in their famous big paper titled Big Data, the Next Frontier for Innovation, Competition and Productivity, that nearly all sectors in the US economy had an average of about 200 terabytes of data, and that organizations could extract a huge amount of value from them. And over the last 10 years, we've really seen a huge amount of investment in the AI space. Because we've now got access to cheaper and faster computers, and this huge amount of progress being made with regards to advanced machine learning techniques, AI can be applied to many problems throughout the economy. And what you're seeing on this particular slide is just an example across retail, fraud, healthcare, manufacturing, and also horizontal disciplines as well, such as customer services, where those organizations and workflows can be transformed with AI, allowing organizations to go from being reactive, making decisions after something has happened, to being a lot more proactive. So everything sounds really, really good and rosy, but let me go back to a few other numbers, 28 and 10. What we're really starting to see now is more and more signs of corporate unease, with businesses starting to question, well, what value are they getting from their AI pound investment? There's this frustration that organizations are just not gaining the value that they thought they would get. And if I took a few numbers, 28% of machine learning initiatives have reported to have failed, according to IDC. Gartner reckon only 53% of initiatives make their way from prototype to production, and that number 10 is only 10% of a data science workday actually end up producing something useful for the company. So while we're nowhere near at the moment entering a second AI winter anytime soon, it is really useful to reflect on why we have these massive inefficiencies and why is AI not gaining why is AI not gaining its maximum potential? So let me link into a quote from Thomas Edison. Thomas says, the value of an idea lies in the using of it. Well, let me take that quote, take a few words out, add a few words of my own back in, and basically we have this. The value of artificial intelligence lies in the using of it. Many organizations have spent days, months, and years taking big data and trying to do what I really phrase as create AI. That creation of AI is around the painful iterations of getting computer environments up and running that can handle huge amounts of data, getting their data ready, getting it fit for purpose, working out how to shape it in a way to feed it into machine learning models. Data scientists then working out, well, which is the best algorithm to use or the right one to use? What's the structure of it to make us get accurate predictions or accurate forecasts? And data scientists pride themselves on doing all of that engineering work. They forget actually the value comes of when you apply it. It's only when you can apply it and put that AI into the hands of business users who can solve real business challenges that the value truly gets realized. Let's be honest, there are few usable AI models at the moment being utilized by business, and this needs to rapidly change. There are huge amounts of time still being created by inefficient processes, inefficient teams, with huge amount of manual steps being taken to move through this process of turning data into value. There's manual steps being taken that we can just automate a lot. How can we take machine learning models that historically are hard to deploy and put that into the hands of business users and create some sort of connection? We need to find ways of getting into this particular scenario. We need to be focused on making better decisions using machine learning. So joining up business, joining up the data scientists with those business users. Data scientists are all about applying techniques to solve challenges for business users. So how do we make it easier for them to do that, but also within an environment that makes IT happy, as IT are responsible for making sure that an organization is gaining optimal usage of any investment in a tech infrastructure. And once we get to that particular point, then organizations can quickly move through these 4 stages of application. And organizations need to get to that top right-hand corner and be adaptive enterprises that are building pipelines that are really integrated into the operational fabric of an organization. Your organizations may be at the experimental stage or even at the automated ML stage, but having something common made up of a number of building blocks to help accelerate that process is really key. And it's at that point I want to hand over to Andrew, who will walk through those building blocks of AI.
Oh, thank you very much, John. So some of the key building blocks of an AI environment is the ones that we're actually showing up on the screen here. So there are six that you should consider as those key building blocks. The first one is the preparation. So preparation and ingestion of data, and then actually modeling that data. The third one is, and quite an important one, is the explainability or the integrity and trust of those models. There's quite often a concern about AI is going to take over the world. What are you actually doing within that model? Sometimes a black box solution. You need to be able to trust what's going on within your business, and also what's controlling these predictions. So the explainability is absolutely critical, very much so with certain customers, such as financial services that are highly regulated. You need to understand what's actually going on with that model. So explainability and trust. And then being able to distribute those models, being able to manage, being able to monitor as well, and proactively distribute these models, these AI models, across your environment. And then it's something that John was talking about, that time to value. How do you actually embrace the key users, if you like, the key decision makers, by developing on those four building blocks, ensuring you can create an interface where business users can leverage everything that you've done before. And then that leads on to the consumption, the different types of consumption of that data, and making it accessible, usable to everyone in the business, from the data scientist to data system to the business user, even to the owners of the business, to leverage what we've already established at the beginning of this presentation, the real benefits of AI. There's certain hurdles, but without doubt there are huge benefits to using this. So building those key components, essentially we're seeing a lot of AI as a service, and it is a component of a business. But certainly more and more, we're seeing that component as part of a key core engine, not only integrating with different data sources and having a flexible way of actually integrating with your key data sources and key platforms, but also running, in this case, on Kubernetes, but having the ability to run on-prem, in public cloud, in a hybrid deployment. Very key to ingesting that data and being able to deliver value, and also comply with the different regulations in different industries and different regions as well. And finally, building AI as a service is also around the consumption, making sure it's accessible to everyone, be it a business user, your operations, developer, data scientists, data engineers. It's really important that service does have the flexibility of not only being exposed to those different users, but also integrating with the different components that you have already within the business. So I wanted to touch on a little bit about H2O, give you a bit of a snapshot about who we are. Hopefully you've heard of us, but we will just cover that now. H2O was founded in 2012, so we've been around quite a bit, quite a long time, really focused on open source, and we continue to pursue our mission and vision of democratizing AI. So we have, as a result of that open source mentality and building that community, we have over 20,000 users using our open source offering. We also have some great community members. Hopefully some of you are here today. And we're helping not only universities, but we also help, we have something called AI for Good. We've been extremely proactive during these trying times around the pandemic. And certainly our founder, our CEO, is very much focused on how can we help healthcare, pharmaceuticals, and obviously regions that are really struggling. And certainly our thoughts go out to India, but we're certainly trying to help that region with sourcing oxygen, and also trying to use predictive models to help different regions model out things. And that's something that's very clear and close to our hearts. On top of the open source piece, we've actually created commercial offerings as well. So John's touched on the hybrid cloud. We've got driverless AI, which is the core automatic machine learning component. And we also have other components that fit in, and we'll touch on that in the next couple of slides. We are a global organization. So we are an American company, but we also have locations across the globe. Okay, so just sort of progressing on that and touching on some of those things. We've helped thousands of businesses and thousands of AI projects develop the value around their businesses through AI. We have some great experts. So if those who are familiar with Kaggle Grandmasters, essentially I liken it to a chess grandmaster, if you like. There's constant competitions in the data scientist world, and people have those, or data scientists have the competitions, they rise to the top and they become the best of the best. We have 5 of the top 20, and we have a total of 20 Kaggle Grandmasters that continuously input their knowledge, their experience into not only open source, but also our commercial products as well. And I touched on the millions of lives we've helped to improve through AI, certainly from modeling the vaccinations to proactively raising money to help different regions. It's something, as I said, is very important to us. So just touching on the H2O products and mapping it back to the different components. We have data engineering, or the data ingest, if you like, the integrations into different data sources, but also data platforms such as Snowflake, Databricks, and Cloudera. The key offering, if you like, for your data scientists and your data citizens is H2O driverless AI. That helps really speed up, automate the whole process, as well as actually selecting the best algorithm for that data. So really speeding up and ensuring that time to value around the initial piece, and delivering the output to the business user. We also provide an operations piece, which is MLOps, to help you manage, deploy that environment and monitor as well. And then the development piece is ensuring that the data scientists, data systems can start actually translating all that core value that you see in the models, in the AI models, into the business, understanding what the business wants and being able to deliver that from the data scientist to the business itself. We've also listened to a lot of our customers, and we've created and we've announced the H2O AI App Store. These are specific apps that address specific challenges within businesses. John will touch on this in the demo, but these enable you to really provide value on top of those different models. Now, in terms of the H2O products, we can combine them into one platform, but you can also separate these out as well and integrate them into, if you've got existing solutions around the data engineering, we can actually plug the different components into your existing deployments. And in this case, as John touched on, we do have something called hybrid cloud. Hybrid Cloud brings all those different components together. We do have a trial version that will touch on how you get access to. That Hybrid Cloud essentially brings all the value into one platform, enables you to access that platform, and gives you an end-to-end solution, accelerating your deployment of AI within your business, and addresses specific use cases. In this case, we've got time series forecasting, predictive maintenance, loan approvals, and fraud detection just being some of those use cases. Again, we'll touch on them in the App Store. You can see some of the visualizations around that. Hopefully this gives you an understanding of the overall platform of bringing all those different components in one interface. I've touched on this before, but you can see within the App Store, we've got different verticals that we're actually helping to address. You can also see the huge amount of investment around the COVID, health, but others as well. So in terms of predictive maintenance, credit scoring, demand sensing, and so on, there are hundreds of apps within the App Store that you can actually leverage to deliver value, immediate value, and reduce that time to value of providing AI within the business. And just a couple of examples. So the first one I want to touch on is the financial services example. As you can see at the bottom, we have that data platform. So the ingestion, we make the models using the best, the most accurate algorithms that are in the marketplace, if you like. Put that all together, really deliver that value very quickly through apps. And then specifically looking at these financial services use case, we can look at fraud detection around credit cards. It's becoming more and more, unfortunately, prevalent across the world. Looking at consumer banking, so personalized recommendations, specific, maybe the right type of loans, the right type of accounts you should be looking at and recommending. So improving that customer experience around the consumer banking. And then also the customer churn. And I think this is probably a key one, especially in a society now where we have the ability to download apps onto your mobile phone. If you don't like it, you move on. It's very similar with the services across businesses. You have, as a consumer, a huge flexibility of changing companies based on your experience. So customer success and customer experience is really, really important. So analyzing that customer success and that experience is again critical for businesses, making sure that customer churn is very low, making sure you're listening to customers, making sure you can actually provide the right experience and the right services, not just around the commercial banking industry, but I think as a whole, everyone wants to make sure they retain their customers and grow the business. And another use case, AT&T have widely deployed H2O across their business. There's some, great quotes that came out of AT&T a few weeks ago. They kindly presented to us internally. But one of the key ones that actually stuck in my head was they reduced fraud by 80% using H2O. And that's absolutely huge. And you can see the progression over a period of time, over 3 years. Initially, they were using rules only, and then they started to use AI and machine learning, only a few models, and now they're using hundreds of models. And the performance, not only around fraud, but in other use cases, is absolutely huge. This is game changing, right? This is something that companies like PayPal, who also rely on H2O around fraud, have really seen huge benefits. Not only large companies, but also smaller companies can utilize our platform to see those benefits. Okay, so John is going to kindly just touch on hybrid cloud and some of the components we've mentioned, both of us, and then also look at the types of value we can deliver to your businesses, to customers' businesses, and things that we've done through the few years that we've had H2O. Thanks, John.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Andrew. So let me just take you through a quick presentation of hybrid cloud. And what you're seeing at the moment is that app store that we've talked about before, with all of these apps being developed by our open source Wave framework, which provides an application environment that is really geared towards data scientists who are experts within Python. The big challenge that you have when creating apps that can sit on a cloud environment, as these do, is that historically you've needed to have very specialist resource from app development teams, such as Java or HTML or CSS. Wave democratizes that application development to a whole wealth of a new audience of data scientists that are proficient, as I said, within Python. And what you're seeing here is the App Store, which is a central repository for all of those apps that, whether it be H2O application developers or whether it be your own data scientists that produce your own customized apps to solve your specific business problem, you can have this App Store that surfaces those apps to your business users. And it's a case of just clicking on an individual app, and then you can go and spin up that application and go and utilize that particular application for business value. So this is an example of a churn app that you can go and integrate with. You've got data about customers that have churned and where they've churned. And then you've got information about which customers are calling into a call center, and then a predictive model that's being executed that's calculating the likelihood of a customer churning based on their various characteristics. You can also have applications specifically built for manufacturing. So this is an example around a predictive maintenance use case where we've got sensors on engines and the data's coming off those sensors, and the numbers that you're seeing are the predictions of how likely is an individual engine to fail based on the data that's coming through those sensors. Clearly what you're seeing is the data being generated in real time, but also those models executing in with real time as well. So how do you go and build those machine learning models quickly in this particular environment? Well, within hybrid cloud, we've got the ability to kick off what are referred to as our AI engines. And those are AI engines that enable you to create that AI that I talked about incredibly quickly. So one of those AI engines is driverless AI. Driverless AI allows you at the click of a button to generate the most accurate model given the data that you've got in the most efficient way. And all you need to do is specify individual dials for how accurate do you want the model, how quickly do you want it to run, and how interpretable do you want the model. And driverless AI will quickly go and build that particular model, looking at all the steps a data scientist would historically manually go through. So it would look at working out which features do we have that could improve the accuracy of the model. How could we manipulate that data to generate more insight? How can we go through that process of working out what algorithm we should utilize and what structure should that algorithm be? The challenge that a data scientist has is that process potentially can take, in the old world, days or even weeks to generate. What we have with driverless AI is this really accelerates that data science process by automating a lot of those tedious routines, and a model can be built in a matter of minutes. But as I've talked about, just because we created some great AI here doesn't mean the business is going to be gaining any value. You need a mechanism to push it into an operational environment. And a lot of the time, IT want to get involved in making sure that that model is robust, it's repeatable, and can be deployed in an environment that allows those models to be executed with very, very low latency. So this is where, at a click of a button, a data scientist can push that model to our MLOps environment. So that's what you're seeing here. We're seeing a number of different projects that I've built up. So I've built a model around general churn, and then one specifically around telco churn. And I can see what models I currently have. I've got a version 1 model that's currently sitting in production, but I'm also developing a model, my version 2, which is currently in that development environment. And what I've got the ability to do is to promote those models at a click of a button into a production environment. And at that point, that model generates a REST API endpoint. And that model will automatically then be deployed, and the Kubernetes environment that MLOps is residing in then becomes your scoring environment. But not only does it become your scoring environment, it also provides you with an environment to quickly monitor the models when they're in production. One of the big challenges that you have with models is that they're a little bit like fish. They do go off. So what you need is a mechanism to constantly monitor the performance of that model, monitor the inputs that are going into the model, and monitor the outputs as well. Lots of organizations spend weeks building their own custom model monitoring capability, where actually it's easier to build or buy a standard that comes directly linked with that model building environment. And then it's at that point, these models can then be picked up by these apps. So if I go back to the original customer churn analytics app, that's where the model that has been deployed is being executed within real time. So as calls come into the call center, we can see which calls are likely, or which customers are likely to churn, and then make some sort of action off the back of it. Okay, so let me just go back to the presentation. The real key and value of AI has been documented, and organizations are making steps to really deliver value from that. But where organizations really have to take their game to the next level is to reduce the amount of time that they are creating AI. And using technology from H2O will allow them to automate a lot of that process of creating it and seamlessly go into the application of it through AIs, and to really gain that business value that we can deliver. So how do you get your hands on some of this technology and start playing with the engines that I've talked about and the apps that Andrew has mentioned to you? Well, you can start getting your hands dirty on that AI hybrid cloud, and you can do it for free. We have a 14-day trial to go to h2o.ai/free. All you need is a corporate email address, and type that in, and you will get within a matter of minutes access to the hybrid cloud for free. There's tutorials on there that will guide you through the end-to-end process that I've talked about in terms of building models, deploying models, and then seeing them surfaced within business applications. So, have we got time for a few questions?
Yes, we do. Thanks, John.
Excellent.
So a first question came in. Is AI really all that new? And why is there so much excitement now around AI?
Okay, so as I mentioned, AI isn't new as a concept, but there's a huge amount of passion and energy because of the fact we've now got technology that is now open to more and more individuals. So historically, even if I go back, so I've been in the industry for nearly 2 decades now. Even if I go back 5 or 6 years, the technology that we had to be used by specialists. What we've seen is a real advancement with regards to technology, and also in got better at integrating some of that technology into business processes. So AI definitely is real. It generates huge amounts of business value, and we touched upon one example from AT&T, but we've got hundreds of different use cases on that. Where I really feel is that we're still in the early stages of AI. There's still only a few use cases that we're touching, and organizations are just scratching the surface.
Great, thanks. And do you think that enterprises will trust AI sufficiently to use it to drive automation?
So that's a really good question. I think there's been a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt put into the whole practice of artificial intelligence. I think that there's been a lot of scare stories about, well, machine learning models are very much black box. So how can we trust the output of that particular machine learning process? There's a huge amount of work, and H2O at the heart of this is how do we demystify AI, but how do we also demystify the machine learning models that are making these automated decisions? People will not trust machine learning models just because a data scientist says so. What we need to do is to get better at opening up that black box and explaining how that machine learning model is making its decision, maybe overall, but also at an individual level. So when identifying fraud, what was it that was specific about that fraudulent transaction that made the system flag it as fraudulent? And H2O, embedded within the technology that I quickly demonstrated, has got mechanisms of opening up that black box. But also we need to be really conscious that we have to be applying AI in a very ethical way. Again, H2O is at the heart of it, is making sure that AI is being used for good. We are using AI responsibly and making sure that there are no biases in the AI that is created. So again, inbuilt into the technology, we have got mechanisms to make sure that the decisions that are being made are fair. They're not biased towards a particular type of maybe gender, a particular type of sexuality, or particular type of race. Making sure that that is all opened up and documented and stored in one central place.
Thanks, John. So, in your opinion, do the business decision makers understand the value of AI, and what makes them see the light on this topic?
Okay, so I think a lot of businesses have been wowed by the potential, but then have become a little bit disillusioned with the speed at which it has taken to create this AI. I really think it's the responsibility of data scientists and IT to help businesses see the value by generating this AI quick generating something that is usable for the business, and doing it in a way that relates to their business problem. I think one of the challenges we as a data science community have is we expect business to speak the language of us. We need to flip that round, and data scientists and IT need to start to speak the business of need to speak the language, sorry, of business, and turn that machine learning terminology into something the business understands, and then they will buy into the process and see how it generates the how it produces the value.
Mhm. Okay, so we got another great question. Are there real financial benefits to businesses who implement AutoML? And could you give us some examples?
So yeah, if I look at so a number of different marketing use cases, what we see is organizations generating more targeted more targeted messaging that allows organizations to increase their response rate. We also find in the marketing example, we can easily identify or quickly identify which particular customers are going to churn, and put in interventions that prevent those customers from churning. One thing, what we can also do is have machine learning models that predict the value of that individual as well. So we can start to then flag up, not only is a customer likely to churn, but what is their value to the organization? And if their value is is small or negative, then actually let's not put any intervention in place and let the customer churn to another organization and incur that debt for another organization. And we've seen it some great use cases around predictive maintenance, that is all about, rather than servicing the machine or fixing the machine when it breaks, doing predictive maintenance and just-in-time maintenance, and doing it just at the time and at the point which that machine is going to fail, which reduces the amount of time and effort that you're spending replacing machines.
Okay. Do companies consider using open source AI technologies as an alternative to commercial software? And if yes, what are the benefits?
So I'm very conscious that I've taken all of the questions and I have a co-presenter. So Andrew, do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, thanks, John. So, so it's interesting. I mean, open source is always going to play a critical part in businesses, and it has increased more and more over I'd say definitely the last decade. What I see personally is open source is very much like you walk into a garage and you've got all these different components, and you can build whatever you want. So it's very, very flexible. So you can plug those components into your business. With what we're doing is essentially taking the best of those components, combining with our knowledge, as I mentioned, the Kagglegram Masters, and actually producing a solution that is easy to use. And I think, as John's talked about, is that time to value. There's a lot of effort going on in creating and those building blocks and putting them together. What we're trying to do is accelerate the time to value for the business overall, and certainly that's the focus that we're doing. So I think there's always a place for open source. But the difference is companies like ourselves will try and use the knowledge, the expertise, and in our case, we've tried to take the best, the Kaggle Grandmasters, to create a solution that delivers value and a faster value. So John, I'm sure you've got some thoughts, but that's my.
Yeah, no, I agree with those. What open source does allow you to do is to test some hypothesis. So any platform that you have, you need to make sure that that platform is open and can consume the latest advancements in open source technology. And H2O platform, being at the heart of the open source community, is a platform that allows you to ingest the latest and greatest ideas from that open source framework.
Thank you. Sounds good. We have a little more technical questions. So one for John, maybe. Are you familiar with the algorithms used as the basis for AI models? Do they contain business-specific data? Are they completely abstract?
So yeah, so that's an interesting question. The algorithms themselves don't have any business data within them. The algorithms have to be trained and utilized, and data needs to be generated to train those particular models. And that's what the platform allows you to do. However, there are some what are called pre-trained models, specifically around use cases around text and also around images as well. And you do have the ability to import those pre-trained models into this environment and then augment them with additional data of your own to make them even more predictive.
Thank you. And what about data confidentiality? A company may have client data, which is in a protected database. So how can we connect and secure the connection between the database and the models?
So probably now's not the right time to go down into all of the technical details of that, but it is possible to have an environment where you've got your personal identifiable data that's in your secure environment and move it across a secure network and put that into a very secure cloud environment.
Great. Thank you, John. So we've come to the end of our time today. We have some unanswered questions, so we will reach out afterwards to make sure that they are addressed, as we said earlier. Thank you, Andrew and John, for taking the time today, and thank you to everyone who joined us. We would love to get your feedback on the webinar and the next topics you would like us to cover. So please answer the quick survey that will show up after we close the event. We hope you enjoyed the presentation. Stay tuned for upcoming events and have a great day.
Excellent.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot.
Bye.